Hi, I'm Seth Stein, and the purpose of this video is just to give you a little feel for hiking in Royale National Park, which is the biggest island in the biggest lake, that's Lake Superior in the world. And it's just a very informal presentation. Isle Royale is perhaps the most interesting backpacking site in the Midwest and one of the more interesting ones in the country. Kind of this very unusual position and unusual place. And very few people go there. So the point of this is just to give you a sense of what Isle Royale is like and how you get there, how it got there, some of its historical and cultural significance, and a feel for some of the trails. It's a very informal, very personal perspective, no pretension of being comprehensive or a tour guide or anything, just something to hopefully whet your appetite and encourage you to think about going there. Isle Royale is a very large island. It's about 40 or 50 miles long, maybe 10 miles across in Lake Superior. As you can see from the map there, it's quite a big feature. It trends sort of northeast, southwest. It's made up of a series of ridges that run along it, including the Greenstone Ridge that we'll see some of the spine of the island. How do you get there? Well, you can get there by boat from Michigan, either from Houghton, which is the big city in the Keweenaw Peninsula, or Copper Harbor, which is a shorter boat ride from the tip. It's about maybe a 5-hour ride from Houghton and maybe a 2-hour ride from Copper Harbor. Or you can also get to the other end of Isle Royale from Grand Portage in Minnesota. You can also get there by a seaplane, which I'll show you examples of that, also from Houghton or from Grand Portage. And what's interesting is that it's a really interesting place simply because it is in the middle of the lake. It's almost entirely wilderness. The only really two developed spots are at one end, at the north end, the Rock Harbor Visitor Center, which contains a lodge. I'll show you a little bit about that, and a harbor. And that's kind of the main developed facility on the island. The other one at the other end is the Wendigo Visitor Center, which is a much smaller enterprise, doesn't have accommodations, and can also be reached there. In addition to getting there, boat or plane that will get you there, there are boats that go around the island and you can get there. And you'll see a lot of waterborne traffic, correct? It's a common place for recreational boaters to come from either side. Okay, the island formed about 1.1 billion years ago. I'm a geologist with Northwestern University, and hence an interest in that. So the t-shirt says it was established 1.1 billion years ago. Native American copper mining started there about 4500 BC, so they've been there for a long time. It came to the US after the Treaty of Paris that ended the American Revolution, treaty with Britain. Around 1837, commercial fishing developed there, and there's still some vestiges of that. In 1843, US copper mining began there as and this was part of the copper boom that made the Keweenaw Peninsula and developed a lot of economic activity there. Tourism started about 1870, and over the years it became a resort. There were hotels and recreational facilities, and through some very far-sighted people, it was made a national park in 1931, which it is today. A little bit about it geologically. Isle Royale and the area around Lake Superior are part of something called the Mid-Continent Rift. It's one of the major geologic features of Central North America. It's a huge thing. It's about 2,000 miles of rock, but they're buried except around Lake Superior. Now we can track those because these rocks are dense and they're highly magnetized. So if you look at a gravity map that shows sort of where gravity is strongest, the red places, we can map this horseshoe-shaped object that goes for, as I said, about 2,000 miles. One arm goes down all the way to Alabama. The other arm also starts in Lake Superior and goes all the way down to Oklahoma. And this geologically records when North America nearly split apart 1.1 billion years ago. Had it succeeded in splitting apart, it would have developed an ocean right there. Now, a lot of what we can see is we can see the volcanic rocks near Lake Superior. And actually one of the best places to see them is Isle Royale. And Isle is made up entirely of these volcanic rocks. This is why Isle Royale, and for that matter, most of Lake Superior, looks so different from the Midwest, with the rest of the Midwest, with these beautiful high volcanic cliffs. The Mid-Continent Rift is what gave rise to these copper deposits that drove the European settlement of the area, in particular the Keweenaw Peninsula, the development of the mining economy there. And interesting enough, this billion-year-old rift controls the location of where Lake Superior is today. So it's really a fascinating area geologically, but that also impacts what we see. Let me show you how that works. We have a pretty good understanding of the structure of the Mid-Continent Rift from seismic reflection surveying. That's the technology that's used to explore for oil offshore or underwater, and where you tow, behind a boat, you tow a sound source and sound waves are sent down. They bounce off different layers of rocks and they're retrieved and recorded on a string of seismometers that tow behind the boat. From that, we can make seismic images, called seismic sections. And what you see here is an enormously deep valley, perhaps 20 miles deep, underneath the center of Lake Superior. And it's filled with volcanic rocks, like the ones we'll see on shore, and then later on with sediments that fill it. Now, what's interesting, if you look at where Isle Royale is there, you'll see it's on the north side of this Rift Valley structure. And that has a very interesting effect for hikers. Isle Royale is a set of these tilted ridges, kind of looking, you would think of it as a deck of playing cards, dipping to the south toward the south side of Lake Superior. So as a result, the south-facing slopes that we hike on are gentle and they're easy to walk up. The north-facing slopes are very steep, and the whole island is a set of these ridges and valleys, ridges and valleys, ridges and valleys. So relative to places we'll see, Rock Harbor, where most people arrive, is at the south end of one of these things. The Greenstone Ridge is the biggest of these volcanic layers. And so that's the spine of the island. And then Lane Cove that we'll hike to is on the other side of it. Okay, if you're going up there, there's a really fun thing to do beforehand is Nevada Bar has two absolutely wonderful novels, detective stories set in Isle Royale. The first one is called The Superior Death. Our heroine, Anna Pigeon, is a park ranger on assignment there, working as a ranger. And in another one, she goes back to participate in the famous study of wolves when the island is closed in the winter and the only people out on there are rangers and wolf researchers to study the wolves there. If you're driving from Chicago, which is usually the way I get up there, it's about 400 miles, which gives you lots of time to listen to a good audiobook, but it's worth doing however you get there. Let me show you two trips here. One is by boat from Copper Harbor. So that's the boat, the Isle Royale Queen. It's a comfortable boat, with comfortable sort of kind of like airplane style seats in it. It takes about 2 hours and eventually you reach Rock Harbor. Here's the view entering the harbor. You can see the basalt layers there and the northern boreal forest. Here's the lodge itself, built along the shore there. It's it's sort of the rooms themselves are sort of motel style rooms, but what's nice is they all have water views. They all have a nice, place, like a deck and a place to dry wet gear. There's a dining room. You can get meals there, and off to the other side, as we'll see, there's a marina and other parts of the facility there. So this is what the marina looks like. The building off to the right is the ranger station with a small convenience store, and boats can dock there from that bring visitors to the island. And this is also where the boats that travel, that we took came. That's my wife Carol, also a geologist in her case with the University of Illinois Chicago. Here's the room from our lodge view. We're drying out our hiking boots. Wonderful water views. And very pleasant place to stay. You can day hike. There's lots of day hikes, literally walking out the door. This is sort of a typical day hike. This is to Scoville Point, one of the tips of the island. And this is sort of the summer days at their best. Bright blue sky, dark blue lake, sunny, rocks everywhere, volcanic rocks everywhere. Another day, we hiked up to the top of the Greenstone Ridge. This is Lookout Louise, so we're looking north toward Canada. And again, you'll always see these long ridges, and in many cases, at this part of the island with water between them. Here again, you see another one of these ridges. And this is very characteristic of what the island looks like. You can visit historic mines. Is this one, what you really see is just sort of like a large pit that they dug. And you know, it was they extracted a fair amount of copper from there. It was very tough working conditions, of course. And we'll see that this was periodically restarted and restarted. The end of that trip, where we day hiked from the lodge for a couple of days, we caught a ride back, and also typical Lake Superior weather. You notice it's raining heavily and everyone's bundled up and hiding, waiting for the boat to come. One of the funny parts is that the people that had come on the seaplane had to ride back on the boat because the weather was so lousy, the seaplane couldn't land. But, you know, it's a little bumpy on the ride back, but everyone's inside and dry. And there's a place in the bow where they store everybody's skiers. So, you know, it's dry and it's comfy, although there's, you know, when there's a storm on the way, it can get a little choppy and a little uncomfortable on your breakfast. Here's another trip. This is with my daughter, Rachel. And here we took the seaplane from Houghton. So if any of you know Houghton, you see in the back the bridge that connects Houghton on the south to Hancock on the north. This is one of the most famous bush planes used in North America. This is a de Havilland Beaver. It's a short takeoff and landing airplane, can land, you know, it can land on floats, as in this one is a float plane. You can also land with wheels. And they're pretty old. The last one was manufactured in 1967, but they're very solid and very rugged and very dependable. This is what the port looks like. They put our gear in these little carts that they're going to bring out to the plane. So the red pack you see there is my pack. That's my daughter Rachel. You can see the servicing facilities, that little cart with the trailer with aviation fuel, and boarding is pretty easy. No boarding passes, no TSA, no security checks. You line up and you get on the plane. Passengers are welcome on the flight deck. My daughter wanted to ride up front, and I said, well, I'd ask the pilot, can she ride up front? The pilot said, certainly. Very friendly and helpful about it. You could argue that that's the first class seat. There's the plane seats 6 people, as I recall. And then you take off. So here we are about to leave the Keweenaw Peninsula, head over the lake. You see Isle Royale approaching, and the views as you come in are absolutely worth it. It's more expensive than taking the boat, but the views are absolutely fantastic. So you can see again, it's a series of ridges here up at the north end with water between them. And the plane is going to turn and it's going to come down. It's turning now and it's going to land in Tobin Harbor, which is just the north side of Rock Harbor. You can see that these ridges give rise to a series of islands. Pilot has lined up the plane to land on Tobin Harbor. And here it goes. Those of you who fly United may have heard the pitch that what to do in the unlikely event of a water landing. In this case, we're guaranteed a water landing. It's kind of exciting. It's fun. Then you get there and all the luggage has been put in the pontoons of the airplane. So for example, we were told no external frame packs allowed. So that's in fact, the gray one off to the right there is my daughter's pack. Mine hasn't come out yet. And take it out, and then you just pick your packs up, you walk down a pier, and you're there. So you walk over to the visitor center to pick up your permits, which you're supposed to have done in advance. And there's a store there where you can get your last snacks if it's open. It's your last chance of junk food before you hit the trail. They have a rather clever thing there. They have a scale you can put your gear on, look at it, and then look at the weight of your backpack and decide, do I really need that or not? Anyway, after you do that, you're committed. We did all the usual delaying things you could do, taking pictures of ourselves next to the sign and so on, and then we're off. So we headed up along the Tobin Harbor Trail, going along the shores of the harbor that we landed on in the plane. And eventually then you turn and start going up toward the Greenstone Ridge. Trails are in good shape. They're some places they're wet. They've bridged a bunch of them. We're here in September, which is a very nice weather, the bugs, the famous horrible bugs of the Lake Superior region have all died off. We had several sunny days. We also had some days of torrential rain, but we'll talk about that next. So we're now heading up. And one of the nice things is as soon as you start going up the Greenstone Ridge, you start to have nice views back toward Lake Superior. This is the top of the Greenstone Ridge at this particular spot. This is Mount Franklin. It's named in honor of Benjamin Franklin. The claim is that Benjamin Franklin, who was the US negotiator with the British when the Treaty of Paris was being established to end the war, the American Revolution, knew about the value of the copper on the island and hence drew the border so that Isle Royale ended up in the US, even though it's actually much closer to Canada than it is to the US. Apparently, according to the guidebook, unfortunately, there's no actual historical evidence for that belief, but it's a good story. And certainly Benjamin Franklin would be smart enough to do that. What you see in the distance are the mountains you see in the distance are around Thunder Bay in Ontario. So that's in Canada. And we're looking north here. Then you go down toward the north side of the island, and that got a little sloppy and soggy here. You're picking your way through mud things, and some parts got a bit buggy. And all in all, this descent was not particularly exciting and not particularly fun, but it was worth it when we got to Lane Cove and got the usual beautiful campsite right on the shore. Put up our tent, settled up for dinner. One of our tent poles was having a little trouble, and my daughter, who has hiked the Appalachian Trail, has gotten pretty good at doing tent repairs. So she just took the tent pole apart and tightened up the shock cord inside it. And so we had a very pleasant evening there, nice day, perfect Northwoods evening, I think, and with a wonderful sunset. We're looking sort of westish. We're looking basically northwest, enough that you get a good sunset. This campground, by the way, is also popular with boaters because you can come here by boat and camp. Now we're going back out the same way we came. So then if I'm going up again over the Greenstone Ridge, the spine of the island, we got up to Mount Franklin again, had lunch there. We took what we call bear breaks, where we stretch out and pretend to be bears and sleep in the sun after a good lunch and just sort of enjoy the view. And then we started hiking along the Greenstone Ridge. Fall was coming. Fall was already coming by mid-September that far north. So you can see that things are starting to turn. You notice there are some deciduous trees as well as the conifers, and some of the plants are turning. It was a really pretty trip. And what was funny was, even though you were actually fairly far north, the ridge is pretty exposed. So on a bright sunny day, it actually got fairly hot. And we were sweating a bit and going through water at a healthy rate. We got up to a wonderful fire tower on Mount Ojibwe. Gives you a wonderful view toward the western end of the island. And this is as far as we got. There's a lot more out there. We just didn't get that far. Want to do that again another time. Now we're looking to the south, so we're going to be heading back down off the ridge, dropping down to the again to the south side of the island, and then we'll be turning left. That's northeast after camping down at the shore. This is the campground we got to called Daisy Farm. There's a dock there that many people come there, ride by boats and camp there. It's a beautiful place. We had a wonderful evening program with the wolf researchers who've been conducting this famous long-term study of the wolves on Isle Royale. It got quite cool in the evening. Everybody dutifully put on their down jackets and so on. What you're not going to see is the next 2 days, because next full day, because it rained continuously. We were at the sort of the northern flank of a hurricane, and they have these lean-tos there that you can't reserve, but first come, first served. So after Labor Day, when they were available, we got into one of those. And for the whole day, everyone just sort of hunkered down in their lean-to and just slept and read books or whatnot, ventured out briefly when they needed water or the bathroom or something. But the storm blew over. The next morning was nice. So we headed north along the Rock Harbor Trail, which is really very pretty, very rocky, of course, as you guess. See some neat evidence of beaver activity. We see some famous mines. By now, all you see is the hole, but you can see the hole where they took out quite a bit of copper in the 1800s. The trail looks sort of like this. You're hiking along rocks most of the time, just following the shore back toward Rock Harbor. Eventually get there, here's Rock Harbor. So that's the building with the visitor center and the store. The store is now closed. There's still some boats, but you have this feeling, you know, this is after the end of the season. Everything is sort of shutting down. So the store is closed. And they say, we'll see you in a year. So we're waiting for the seaplane. We stretch out on the rocks and let wet gear dry and sleep in the sun. For those of you who are used to it, this is Isle Royale's version of the United Club. This is Isle Royale's version of the gate area. You'll see that there's a dock, the seaplane docks there. The canoes are stored up for the winter now. And we get on the plane, and as soon as all the 6 people get on the plane, then the pilot takes off and heads. So we get wonderful views on our way across Isle Royale as we leave. Google Maps actually does a surprisingly good job. You can see it shows us we're about halfway between Isle Royale and Houghton on our way. We're coming into Houghton, beautiful view of the city. So remember, there's the lift bridge in the middle, Houghton to the right on the south, Hancock on the north, and that's the canal that cuts across the Keweenaw that boats would use because it was safer. And actually, the Native Americans also used this area, this river, as the safer passage and going around the tip of the Keweenaw. Incidentally, off to the right, the big boat there is the Ranger. That's the ferry that's operated by the National Park Service. And the building next to it are the headquarters of the visitor center, I guess, actually, maybe the headquarters too, of the National Park Service for Isle Royale National Park. The high rise off in the distance is part of the grounds of Michigan Tech. So we've come in for a landing. You can see the other plane is there. Our car has been left in the parking lot up to the left. And the trip's over. If you're interested in learning more about this, there's a nice guidebook that you can order. It's good maps, clear explanations. My wife Carol in the picture there, who we saw earlier hiking, and I produced a video about this, focusing on the geology. You can find it on YouTube, Lake Superior and Mid-Continent Rift, the Billion-Year Story. Or if you simply go to my homepage, you can find a lot more information about Lake Superior and the Mid-Continent Rift. Again, popular geology. We've also done a version of this for the National Park Service in their publication, Park Science. You can get that off my webpage if you're interested in that. And there's also a very nice webpage or complete website maintained by Bill Rose and his coworkers at Michigan Tech, and about the Keweenaw. So again, I'd encourage you to go if you're at all interested. It's really a special place, and it's one of the least visited national parks. So it's really an unusual and interesting place. So thank you.